Thank you, Mark, and a big hello from London. An interesting series of weekly technical patterns last week, as some were seemingly contradictory. We only had a few in the currencies, with weekly key reversals down in US dollar Brazilian real and US dollar Philippine peso, whilst we also had a weekly key reversal up in US dollar Argentine peso blue dollar. There was no follow-through moves on the Brazilian real or Philippine peso. Indeed, we have seen prices this week pull back up into last week's range, though not exceed it as yet. However, in US dollar Argentine peso blue dollar, we have seen a follow-on higher to new highs not seen since early August last year. In the fixed income markets, we had international unanimity, with weekly key reversals up last week in the futures on UK Gilts, German Bunds, US bonds, and Japanese Osaka JGBs. However, the follow-on this week, well, it has been mixed, with some moving higher and others pulling back within last week's range. Now we come to the contradictory weekly patterns. Last week we had weekly key reversals up in the E-mini S&P futures, and in both the NASDAQ Composite and the 100 indexes, in the Russell 2000 index, and even in the Nikkei 225 index in Japan. All these, with the possible exception of the Russell 2000 index, have either followed on higher or are close to the top end of last week's range. And I'd include the Russell 2000 index in this as well, though it closed last night under last Friday's close. However, there was a glaring exception to this, and that was the Dow Jones index. On the Dow Jones index, we had a weekly key reversal down last week. Yes, down. And not just barely, but a clear weekly key reversal down. Yet this week we have seen even this index fall in line with the others and head higher, with yesterday being the second highest high ever and the highest close ever as well. Over now to the commodities, and we had a weekly key reversal up in the Brent gas oil futures spread last week, which has seen a suitable follow-on higher this week already, and is the second weekly key reversal up seen here in the last 3 weeks. Keeping with the crude oil theme, we had weekly key reversals down last week in both the NYMEX WTI and the ICE Brent crude oil futures. However, this week we have not seen any follow-through lower, with prices instead moving back up within last week's range. In the softs, we had a weekly key reversal down last week in London white sugar futures, which attempted to start lower this week on Monday but have since pulled back up within last week's range. I cover this more fully in my weekly sugar video commentary out this past Monday, especially the idea of the recent action being a rectangle pattern. Over to the metals, and we had a weekly key reversal down last week, if only just on LME 3-month lead prices. This week we have seen a satisfactory, if unspectacular, move lower, moving down towards the low seen in the middle of August. I cover this more fully in my weekly metals video commentaries published yesterday. Finally, we had a weekly key reversal up last week in Dalian iron ore futures in China, and we have seen a more than satisfactory follow-on higher this week, though I do see the possibility, which I'm sure you do now as well, for a double top pattern here. As always, I'm happy to answer any direct questions with anyone who's interested, and with that I'll finish this section from London, and I hope that you found these comments useful.
Thank you for listening and watching this broadcast. This weekly broadcast gives the essential market patterns and consequences. Please be aware of the risk disclaimer posted both at the front and at the back of this broadcast. The copyright is Eddie Tofpik and ADM Investor Services International Limited. And here comes the final important bit.